260 AC, King Jaehaerys II Targaryen had known that Maelys Blackfyre and the Band of Nine meant to win the Seven Kingdoms for Maelys, who had already declared himself King Maelys I Blackfyre. But like his father, King Aegon V, Jaehaerys had hoped that the alliance of rogues would founder in Essos, or fall at the hands of some alliance amongst the free cities. But as the free cities squabbled amongst themselves, each more interested in their own self-preservation, no alliance was formed. Thus, Maelys' path to the Seven Kingdoms had been cleared. Now the moment was at hand, as war quickly approached, did the weakness of House Targaryen's position start to rear its head. King Aegon V had died trying to hatch dragons, burning Summerhall to the ground along with most of the royal family. Prince Duncan lost his life in the fire, and Aegon's third son, Prince Daeron, whom was a splendid knight, had died years before in battle, leaving only Jaehaerys, the least martial of Aegon's three sons, and the least well-suited to fight a war. War approached so rapidly after the ascension of Jaehaerys, he hardly had time to prepare himself for the challenges that were about to come. The new king was 34 years of age when he sat the Iron Throne for the first time. No one would have called him formidable or an imposing figure. Not the kind of man to inspire great acts of courage. Unlike his brothers, Jaehaerys was thin, scrawny, and had battled various ailments and illnesses all of his life. In fact, some had pointed out his speculated deformed arm could be the reason as to why he took little interest in learning the ways of war as a young man. While he did not inspire courage, in truth, he did not lack courage himself, or intelligence. Even if King Jaehaerys was not ready for war, it was lucky for the realm that his father had begun to broadly plan the defence of the realm in the event the Band of Nine ever did make it to the shores of Westeros. Drawing on his father's plans, Jaehaerys put aside his grief for the loss of so many of his close kin, called his lords bannermen, and resolved to meet the Ninepenny Kings upon the stepstones, choosing to take the war to them rather than awaiting their landing on the shores of the Seven Kingdoms proper. The king had intended to lead the attack upon the Ninepenny Kings himself, but his hand, Lord Ormond Baratheon, persuaded him that it would be unwise, given his lack of experience at war. The king was not used to the rigours of campaign and not skilled in arms, the hand pointed out, and it would be a folly to risk losing him in battle so soon after the tragedy of Summerhall, that the event of the king's death in itself could cause some lords to look to Maelys as a viable option as king. Jaehaerys finally allowed himself to be persuaded to remain at King's Landing with his queen Sarah, his daughter Rhaella, and his infant grandson Rhaegar, who had been born as the fires at Summerhall raged. Command of the host was given to Lord Ormond as the hand of the king, a man more capable of leading the united army of Westeros against a formidable foe. Later that year, Lord Ormond landed Targaryen armies upon 3 of the stepstones, and the War of the Ninepenny Kings turned into one of the bloodiest conflicts since the Redgrass Field during the First Blackfyre Rebellion. The task force included a fleet of 100 longships, led by Quellan Greyjoy, Lord of the Iron Islands, and a force of 1,000 knights and 10,000 men-at-arms sent by Lord Titus Lannister from the Westerlands, under the leadership of his younger brother, Sir Jason Lannister. House Martell also sent spears from Dorne, and great lords and small from up and down Westeros sent what men they could. Battle raged across the islands and the channels between for most of that year, with for a long time the balance of power remaining fairly evenly matched. Maester Eon's account of the War of the Ninepenny Kings, one of the finest of its kind, is a splendid source for the details of the fighting, with its many battles on land, sea, and notable feats of arms. Lord Ormond Baratheon, the Westerosi commander, was amongst the first notable participants to perish, cut down by the hand of Maelys the Monstrous himself. He died in the arms of his son and heir, Steffon Baratheon. There were many other notable losses as well. Sir Jason Lannister was killed on Bloodstone, with Lord Roger Rayne left to lead the remaining Westermen to several victories. Command of the Targaryen host passed to the new young Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Sir Gerald Hightower, known to the history books as the White Bull. Hightower and his men were hard-pressed for a time, but as the war hung in the balance, as the Ninepenny Kings grew in confidence, a young knight from the Dornish marches, named Ser Barristain Selmy, slew Maelys the Monstrous in single combat. Barristain cut a bloody path through the entirety of the Golden Company to reach Maelys, to the shock of all on both sides of the battle. In doing this, Ser Barristain won the undying renown, forever earning his place in the history books, deciding the issue of the War of the Ninepenny Kings in a single stroke. The remainder of the Ninepenny Kings had little or no interest in Westeros with Maelys dead, and soon fell back to their own domains across the narrow sea. Maelys the Monstrous was the fifth and last Blackfyre pretender. With his death, the curse that Aegon the Unworthy had inflicted upon the Seven Kingdoms by giving the Sword of Kings to his bastard son was finally ended, at least through the known male line. Who knows the true extent of House Blackfyre's time in Essos? Maybe out there somewhere across the narrow sea, the blood of the Black Dragon still flows. Half a year of hard fighting remained before the stepstones and the disputed lands were free from the remaining Band of Nine, and it would be a further 6 years before Aerys, the tyrant of Tyrosh, was poisoned by his queen. The Archon of Tyrosh was restored. For the Seven Kingdoms, it had been a grand victory, though not without significant cost of lives or suffering. The realm thereafter returned to peace, though never strong. The impact the War of the Ninepenny Kings had on Westeros cannot be understated. It was through this war the pieces began to move into place that allowed for the downfall of House Targaryen to happen the way it did. Many great lords and heirs were killed. Friendships and bonds between men and houses were formed that would transcend generations. The aftermath of the fighting is almost as important, if not more so, than the war itself. With Ormond Baratheon slain, Steffon Baratheon became the new Lord of Storm's End. He'd remained close friends with both Prince Aerys Targaryen and Sir Tywin Lannister, whom both fought in the war alongside him. Tywin himself was a new-made knight, received the honour of giving Prince Aerys his spurs after fighting gallantly in the war. This all began to lead to Tywin becoming bitter and hardened, particularly against his ineffectual lord father, Tytos, who had not taken part in the war, rather remaining home with his mistresses. Those tensions soon erupted into the Rain Tarbak Revolt of 261 AC, resulting in the utter destruction of the Reigns of Castamere, becoming part of Tywin Lannister's legend. It should also be noted that Lord Hoster Tully became acquainted with a small petty lord from the Fingers, a Lord Baelish, during the war, where they fought side by side. Lord Baelish did some kind of service for Hoster, which was later repaid when Hoster accepted to take Baelish's son, Peter, as a ward in Riverrun, with the very same Peter Baelish eventually rising the ranks, becoming Master of Coin and an important part in court life in years to come. Jon Arryn also became acquainted with Lord Rickard Stark of Winterfell and Lord Steffon Baratheon of Storm's End, which resulted in several years later Jon taking their sons Eddard Stark and Robert Baratheon as his wards at the Arry in the Vale, as well as in time setting up a series of marriage pacts between House Arryn, Stark, Tully and Baratheon that would in time become a vital part of the history of Westeros in a way no man could have foreseen at the time. Ser Barristain Selmy, when the next opening presented itself, was named to the Kingsguard, an opening he accepted despite being the heir to Harvest Hall and being betrothed at the time, Barristan, for his service in the Kingsguard and actions during the War of the Ninepenny Kings, would be counted among the best and legendary knights to ever wear the white cloak.